Good morning, almost midday. Shalom. We are not going to do a midday moment, and we're late on the morning moment. I do have a meeting actually at midday today, so we're going to kind of combine the two. And me being late on getting to the morning moment has nothing to do with it at all. No, I was late, but I decided I would go ahead and just combine the two. And Lord willing, we hope to next week have this thing better scheduled. But anyways, a reading that I posted this morning on following him. We've been putting up readings of strength and readings of comfort, reading of strength in the morning, reading of comfort at night. And with some of these readings, they are things that maybe it's not as blatant at first how it's a reading of strength or how it's a reading of comfort. Some of the readings of comfort you might have to stop and think, say, whoa, okay, how is this comforting? But it's one of those things when you think it through, it is. But anyways, the reading of strength put up this morning was about care for those who have lost and have need, and it was tying in with Exodus 22 through 24, and the caption was about caring for those that have lost and have need. That this is basically a way of showing strength. Maybe I can put that picture that we post up on the screen when I repost this video a little bit later on today. But with this reading is about them not afflicting the widows and fatherless children, not afflicting widows and orphans. And, this has been a phrase, widows and orphans, that gets used together quite a bit. Talking about caring for the widows and orphans as just kind of a part of being what Christians do. And of course, this was from the Torah. It was something that God's people do. With those principles in mind, and when you read those verses through, Yahweh, which I would submit in that context, that's actually Jesus talking. The angel of the Lord, the messenger of Yahweh, the evidence is that is Christ, that the theophanies in the Old Testament, the appearances of God where he's actually manifesting himself in some way, the evidence points that being Christ. We do, like the Ancient of Days and Daniel 7, I do believe that would be the Father, but that's a whole other discussion. But we have Christ talking there, and he's very, very blunt and very strong language about those that afflict. In fact, goes on to talk about those that afflict in any way. These groups, the widows and orphans. And I hear from a reliable source. I'm very picky about who I listen to when it comes to news sources. I try to look for very unbiased sources. And I'm not saying I'm always successful on that. And I do listen to some that have some bias. And everybody has some biases to a degree. But from an unbiased source that apparently Ben Shapiro is teaming up with Erica Kirk and with the law firm that represented the baker out in Colorado when they were trying to force him into laboring for a wedding, and he did not want to privately contract to do a cake for the wedding because of the message of the cake. In fact, I think he would have even baked a cake, just wanted to put a message on it. But they wanted a very specific cake for a same-sex wedding, and this was contrary to this man's religious beliefs, and he couldn't in good conscience do it. I couldn't either. And so he refused, and then there was a law firm that did defend him on this case. Really, really horrible thing that happened, that you would force somebody to do something in violation of their religious beliefs. It's like forcing a Muslim to, bake a cake in the shape of a pig or something. It's just not something to do. Or force a religious Jew to, bake a, he is risen cake for Easter or something. It's just not something you do, right? So, and so this law firm that defended him, that Ben Shapiro, Erica Kirk, they're working this law firm to sue Candace Owens. And I will say, in the past, I was a fan. I think this issue with Candace Owens, with what she's been doing in regards to Erica Kirk, I think Christians need to not be afraid to speak up on this. Scripture is very blatant about bad treatment of widows. and orphans. So, well, she's not been saying anything about the kids. Well, here's the thing: everything she's putting up, this whole, this video expose thing, Bride of Charlie, and all this sort of stuff. It's out there now. It's out there now, and occasionally things do almost entirely come off the internet. You can work with various cease and desist orders and get stuff taken down, but it's hard to remove it entirely. That stuff's going to be out there for Charlie Kirk's kids to see. And Candace Owens has been going after her with all these different claims. Initially she was questioning the narrative about what actually happened to Charlie, even though we have the guy that did it. We have the guy that, at this point there's even a confession and all this sort of thing that he did it. And apparently some recent ballistics did match up, as far as like with the type of gun he used and stuff. And we're not going into the details there. I don't know all of them, but I know enough to say it looks like the guy did it. And she was questioning that. And yes, we're a free society. You can ask questions. And there was one point at which she's saying, the only two people that could make her stop would be her husband and Erica Kirk. Erica Kirk told her to stop. She goes after Erica Kirk. So with them suing Candace Owens, I think this is good. I think this is a good thing. Now, yes, as far as like, if Christians not supposed to sue Christians, and now that's a big discussion, I think a nuanced discussion that's not maybe quite as cut and dry on all cases, and that's something people have been debating for some time now. But, based on what I see with Candace Owens, I mean, for starters, if Ben Shapiro's not a Christian. Candace Owens would claim to be Catholic or something. Candace Owens' actions, her words, her foul mouth would indicate she's not a follower of Christ. She's just not. This whole thing that she has been doing and that people have been playing into and that people have been, jumping on the bandwagon about, and, that Erica Kirk, well, she's not grieving properly. I can tell you, from being quite some years in ministry, I'm not necessarily saying how many, but it's been quite some years now. People grieve differently, and people of faith grieve differently than everyone. I as a preacher, when you deal with studying about somebody's final home in heaven and studying about the afterlife, knowing that this life isn't it. Even for me, I know after many years of studying this stuff, I don't handle death the same way I did when I was younger. And people of faith don't handle death the same way. It is not uncommon to see somebody laughing, to see somebody smiling. When people, they, say, well, when my dog died, I was in bed for a month. I'm like, okay, that's a personal problem, man. This thing that people are so narcissistic and selfish that if she doesn't do things the way they think she should do them, then she must have done something. And Candace Owens piling on with this. I think this lawsuit is good. Is kind of rambling at this point. I think this lawsuit is good. I think this thing that's been happening with Erica Kirk, I think the principle of like what we have in Exodus 22 through 24. Now, yes, we're not under the Torah anymore, but it's there for our learning. The word Torah itself actually means learning. It oftentimes translated as law, and it was, that's kind of a dynamic paraphrase sort of thing for it, but it's the more literal rendering is teaching. They're being taught something through that. When you look at the strong language God has about those that oppress the widows and the orphans, it's not okay. It's not okay. What Candace has been doing is not okay. It looks like we have the killer. Let the system do its job. They're building a case. Candace seems determined to tear it down. It's good that people are taking action to stop her, because this sort of thing does not need to be allowed to happen. It's been evil. That is my trying to be considered opinion as a follower of the Christ. I know you don't treat a man that you claim to respect and love, you don't treat his widow the way Candace Owens has been doing. I think Candace Owens is an evil person. I used to have a lot of respect for her. I have no respect for her whatsoever. With the recent comments about, the whole dream things and people being hybrids and all this, it's just that's not somebody that can be taken seriously. And yes, she needs to be sued. Something needs to be done. That's the morning, almost midday moment. Those are my thoughts. Look at Exodus 22 through 24, and consider the principles that are there. Remember, these things are there for our learning. We're supposed to love our neighbor as ourselves, and just asking a bunch of questions to get people to the point where she would have threats on her life, it's not okay. It's not okay. You have a good rest of the day. Lord willing, the Friday Freedom video will be posted fairly soon, and shalom.